And hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night, whatever it may happen to be. This is Tad. Hi, good to see you. I'll be here for about another hour reading from Happy Hour in Hell. I think that's pretty much the size of it. I still don't know why is this thing doing so many weird things. Okay. Anyway, I think that's about the size of it. Another interesting, busy week. As you can perhaps see behind me, I'm beginning to get the office knocked into shape. There's still a, whoops, there's still a pile of cat related things there that we have to figure out what to do with. And when I say we, I mean myself and the actual owner of the cats. I am merely the caretaker, kind of like the Shining. I am the caretaker of the two haunted twins. Anyway, so that's basically what else has been going on. I'm doing a lot of in my head stuff with the Splintered Sun, as I mentioned last week. Nothing much has changed there. We're going out of town in another, God, is it only 13 days? 2 weeks? Jeez. Anyway, so that's coming up. Trying to keep up with various things around here that have to be dealt with. By and large, no complaints. Dogs largely status quo ante from last week, meaning that we're kind of in detente where Johnny just stays outside most of the time. As long as she's on her tether and her crate, he'll come back in, but he's not in a hurry to be Lemon's buddy. I think she's actually would be quite amenable to such an operation or such a relationship, you know. She's pretty friendly, but Johnny is very cautious and always has been. I probably told you this, but when we first saw the listing for him at the through the Fosters that were taking care of him, they referred to him as he was about a year old at the time, roughly a little less than that maybe, and they referred to him as a puppy ninja because he was so stealthy and so quiet and so mild mannered. And then when we got him home after a couple of weeks, as often happens, he settled in and we began to see the full flowering of his personality, which on the one hand was, you know, some lovely running and jumping and happiness and all that kind of stuff, but was also a great deal of worry about a great deal of things, as I've mentioned in the past. He doesn't like rain. He doesn't like wind. He doesn't like sudden noises. He doesn't like really any noises outside of the ordinary. He doesn't like trucks. He doesn't like cars. He doesn't like people walking by on the street. All of them fill him with a certain Weltschmerz. Uh, he's he's a funny dog. But anyway, but so that's what's going on around here. Dealing with the cats and their confusion at me having moved all of their stuff from where it was and being in the course of revising the office. The dogs, because Johnny is still going like, what the hell is this other dog doing here? I mean, for a moment there, it would have been okay. I thought it was all right, but then she just stays. What's that about? And so anyway, what else is there to relate? Not really much. It's been a fairly slow, not slow, but it's been a fairly unsurprising last week with just lots to do, lots to take care of, trying to be a little more present on social media, but also trying to do a lot of different work. And so, yeah, I'm here. I'm here. I'm maybe a little dippy tonight. I apologize in advance if I don't read well or anything, because we had some gardeners in to do something, and so at like 8 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning. Now, mind you, even on a good night, I don't get to sleep until 3:30 around there. On a night like tonight, when I'm up doing this, I probably won't get to sleep until almost 5. But this morning, you know, Johnny's out in the yard. There are gardeners on the property, although not where he is, obviously. But and so he just bark, 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 and then they wanted to get into, you know, so I had to wake up and deal with that, and then tried to go back to bed, and then the gardeners had to move into the field where Johnny was hanging out, and so we brought him into the house and because Lemon was out in the other part of the house with Deb. Johnny came into the bedroom with me and then proceeded to spend the next hour and a half desperate to get back out again. And as he does when he's in these modes, he like scratches on the window, he scratches on the wall, he's going these like horrible panic noises. Oh, it's just tragic. And of course, I would let him out if I could, but you know, we don't want him out there barking at the gardeners from like next to them. I don't think he'd actually attack anybody, but he's pretty friendly in his, you know, but he's definitely kind of scary looking if you don't know, you know, he's 70, 80 pound dog. He looks fierce. He looks like he might be part wolf or something. He's the biggest chicken heart you ever saw in your life. I mean, he's like something out of the Wizard of Oz, but he does get aggressively loud when he's concerned about any of the thousands of things he's concerned about. So that was my morning. And I finally, you know, once it was all over with and I spent like 2 hours in just misery, I went back to bed for a little while. But I haven't been right all day. Not, I mean, you know, compared to what, Tad? Yeah. I'm always a bit off, but I am particularly off today from disturbed sleep, loud barking, scratching, scraping 5 feet from my head. And then, of course, Johnny being Johnny, every now and then, he's positive that I mean, in a way, it shows a kind of a charming trust. He's positive that if I understood because I'm his parent figure, he's positive that if I understood the nature of his worry, then I would do something to fix it, which, of course, is not always possible. But bless him, Johnny thinks, oh, good God, cats are going crazy. Johnny thinks that if he just thumps on me long enough and pants on me and drools on me in worry, that at a certain point I will understand that this is the real deal, that the end of the world is here, or that the murder squirrels are coming and the night bunnies and burglars and pumas and, you know, anyway. So, of course, there's that, too. There's the alternatingly scratching on the door, scratching on the wall, coming over and thumping me on the head, drooling on me. Dad, wake up. You know, it's so forgive me if I'm a bit dippy today. I don't think I've lost track of my conversation yet, but it might happen later on. So forgive me in advance for any such things. So yeah, I'm going to go check in and see how everybody's doing. So let's go see who we have. And I see that Petra is checked in, and Petra is in France. So excellent, cool. Have a great time there. Bon vacances. Isaac checked in. Says I've brought the wind and the hail. There's Kristen saying Happy Mother's Day, and thank you for that. Although I am not technically a mother, but I am to Johnny. I'm Johnny's mother, but I'm a dad for all the others. But anyway, thank you and hello. Good to see you, as always. And let's see. I know there's more conversation than that. Yes, there's Chris Van Dahl checking in from Malta. 10 a.m. in Malta. Wow, cool, Chris. I didn't know you. Oh, yeah. No, you did say something about that, I think. Let's see who else is checked in. Oh, good. Okay, here we go. Andre, hello. Thank you for that quote. It's funny that you should pick. I think that's a Shadow March quote, isn't it? Yeah, I believe that's the Shadow March quote. I've actually rereading the Shadow March books because I never read them before. And they're far enough in my past now that I hardly remember anything. So I can almost read them like I would read a normal book, which is really weird and interesting. Why I'm reading them is another question, but it's nothing deep or hidden or anything. That I'm not planning on writing a sequel or anything. I just picked them up the other day to check something. And then just kind of kept reading, which is weird. I very seldom, if ever, have had the experience of reading my own stuff and not knowing every single thing that was going to happen next. So that's been kind of interesting. Anyway, and I have some thoughts about them, but I will share them another time. So, especially if I'm going to keep reading for a while, I will have some more thoughts on Shadow March. But actually, I'm looking back on it now, and I know for a lot of people found my work through Otherland. A lot of people found my work through the Dragonbone Chair books and the subsequent Ostenard books. And there's a lot going on in the Shadow March books. I'd forgotten how much work I put into those, but as I'm looking at them again, I'm going, oh yeah. I really did a lot of world building and stuff there, and yeah, there's a lot of interesting characters, and having these little moments, which are nice to be able to have, as opposed to the ones where you go, my God, what was I thinking? Anyway, let's check and see who else is here. Mark Redmond has checked in from a warm, sunny Sunday morning in Yorkshire. Lovely. Christy, hello, Christy. Good morning. Chenoa, greetings. Hope everyone is well. Yes, everyone is well here. And as a matter of fact, at this very moment, under our roof tonight. I see my mother-in-law is coming up, so I'll tell her. Deb is asleep, but our daughter is here, and our son is here, and our son's girlfriend are all sleeping at the house tonight. So Deborah was very pleased. She was like, "Isn't it nice to have the sounds of family here?" And I said, "Well, it's better than barking." Anyway, Christina, hello. Good to see you. Nice. Mark, thank you for the compliment. Mark Craigbaum, hello, buddy. Good to see you. And there is my mother-in-law right under Mark's comment. Good morning, sweetie. Good to see you. That is Hazel, my mother-in-law, my beloved wife's beloved mom, and checking in from the Midlands of the UK. Daniela, hello. Good morning. Welcome. Nicole, hello. Good to have you with us too. Penny, hello. How are you? Happy Mother's Day to all the mums. Absolutely. To all the mums. And that's even, some of you are only honorary mums, like I am. Because I'm really only mother to Johnny, but I'm dad to everybody else. Well, not everybody else, obviously. But there are many honorary mums out there who haven't actually given birth themselves, but are acting in loco parentis for various reasons, or just because they have people that they love around them who need a little grown-up vibe sometimes from a mom surrogate. So yes, happy Mother's Day to all the moms. Happy Mother's Day especially to my mother-in-law, Hazel. So good to see you, sweetie. And we will be seeing you for real in just a couple of weeks. Okay, so Christina is recommending a musical, And Julia, which I don't know. If it was in Hamburg, it's probably And Julia. Great stuff. Definitely recommend it to people who like pop music and fun and dancing and strong women characters. Well, that's me, so... no more cat playground behind me. Well, no, there is a cat playground, but most of the pieces of it are shoved in the corner until I can figure out how to get them cleaned up a little bit before we start placing them back around the room. Okay, anybody else I haven't said hello to? Oh, Rick Davies, 1 a.m. in Tucson. Hello, Rick. Good to see you. Kristen says you never read your own book. No, I don't really. I had to go back and read them for various things, but I would usually just read parts of them, because until the Witchwood Crown, I never had any intention of writing anything that was even remotely like a sequel. So I read bits and pieces of the Otherland books when I was writing some of the short stories, the Orlando-based short stories. I then had to go back and reread the Dragonbone Chair, etc. But for various reasons, because of short stories and stuff, I had been diving back into them at least enough to look things up. So, and I know those books so well, that even as I was working on them, even as I was working on the new books, The Witchwood Crown, etc., I felt very familiar with those books, whereas for some reason the Shadow March books have kind of fallen into the background. But generally, no, I don't read my own work if I can avoid it. Not because there's anything wrong with it, and not because I'm ashamed of it or anything, but it just doesn't do much for me because, I don't get surprised by it usually. And that's actually one of the interesting things about the rereading the Shadow March books, is that it's been far enough in the past, and I haven't been going back through them for any reason, because I haven't done any Shadow March based short stories for a long time, and so I don't really remember it very well. I mean, obviously I remember the main details, and I read the first book to you guys, so I didn't reread that. But it's just interesting. It's interesting because I will be going like, who's that character? I don't remember that. Oh, does this happen now? No. Okay. Well, I thought it did. Maybe it happens later, you know. So it's kind of vague. It's like, yeah, it's like reading somebody else's book, which is an interesting thing to do. Uh, you know, it's like when your leg goes to sleep and it doesn't feel like your own leg anymore. My book has gone to sleep for me. Anyway, Andre, hello, Andre. Yes, good to see you again. I did love that quote too. Thank you for sharing that with us. Tom Malkowitz, hello, Tom. Good to see you. And who else? Andrew Kapunt. Hello, hello. Nice to have you with us. And Rick, yes, I know which Rick Davies that is. Good to see you, buddy. Nice to have you aboard. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to reading, since that is the nominal purpose of this whole thing. And what I am reading from, of course, is Happy Hour in Hell. We're not in hell yet. We've got a ways to go before we go to hell. So don't worry, you're not in hell yet. What happened last time that I was reading is we got to the point where Bobby was walking along with one of his other angel buddies, one of his co-workers, a guy named Walter Sanders, one of the few people with a normal name, quote unquote. And as they were walking outside the Compasses, the bar where they hang out, they were attacked. And Walter, whether accidentally or not, idiot cats, was stabbed. And so everybody came spilling out of the Compasses, and the police showed up, and the guy who stabbed him ran away. But I'm just going to read you the last couple of paragraphs here. What happened after that. So this is the end of the previous chapter. But as I stood there, letting the shocked questions of the Compasses regulars wash over me, I was hardly even thinking about Walter. I assumed he'd be back maybe as soon as tomorrow, decanted into new flesh by the boys upstairs and with a story to tell that would fascinate anyone who hadn't been around tonight. As it happened, I was wrong, but I wasn't to know that for a while. No, the reason I was standing there in the whirling red and blue strobes of the cop cars, waiting as witlessly to be questioned as any normal human victim of a normal human tragedy, was because I had recognized the thing that stabbed Walter. Recognized the whispery voice and the momentary glimpse of tiny misshapen teeth. I knew without having seen it what the wound just under Walter Sanders' ribs was going to look like. A four-pointed star. A puncture made by something more like a bayonet than any normal dagger. But even that wasn't what was bugging the shit out of me. Not only had I seen that creature before, I had been present when it died. Died the real death, the not coming back kind of death that only an immortal fears. And yet, it had come back. It had come back. Chapter 4, Cloak and Knife. And those are spelled C-L-O-K-E and K-N-Y-F-E because they're a quote out of Chaucer, sort of. But we'll get to that in a moment. Chapter 4, Cloak and Knife. No offense, but isn't it a bit early to be drinking? I would have laughed if I'd been able to. Instead, I took another sip. It's a Bloody Mary. There's tomato juice in it. That makes it breakfast. Clarence looked concerned, which made me want to order a couple more, but to be honest, the puddle of red that had collected around the bottom of the glass was making me a little queasy, reminding me unpleasantly of the night before. Interesting place. Clarence looked around the joint. His eyes stopped on a man hunched over huevos rancheros and a nearly empty beer. The top of the man's fedora had been cut off. None too neatly. Greasy gray hair stuck up through the hole like an untended garden. Interesting clientele. That's Jupiter, I said. He's solar powered. What? Clarence blinked and snuck another glance. Solar? That's what he thinks, anyway. He cuts the top off all his hats so the sun can keep him strong. I shrugged. He's harmless. The ambiance of Oyster Bill's was a bit seedy at the best of times, from the drunks on the sidewalk outside to the streaks of seagull shit on the windows. but particularly so in the morning. That's one reason I don't like mornings. It's life without the grace of shadows, that blessed fuzziness that lets us ignore some of the depressing stuff. But I hadn't slept much, and once the sun snuck through the chink in my curtains and slapped me in the face, I was awake for good. At this time of the day, Bill's legitimate breakfast crowd had all moved on. So the only people in there were people like me and Jupiter, just looking to get a little buzzed while we ate. And Lord, did I need to get a little buzzed. So you said you wanted to talk? I had. And with Sam gone, my choices were limited. I could have talked to Monica, but as I've said, that's a little dodgy for me right now. I had settled on Clarence the Rookie Angel because I was thinking of tapping him for a favor, and he had connections in the Hall of Records upstairs. But now that I was sitting there, peering over my omelet at his alert, scrubbed face, I wasn't so sure. Talking to the kid about anything complicated usually felt like trying to discuss hangovers with a Mormon missionary. What you got was a combination of ignorance and disapproval. Plus, though the kid undoubtedly thought he was doing the right thing, I hadn't forgiven him for working undercover for our bosses to bust my pal Sam. He might have thought he was doing the right thing, and he might be having second thoughts about it now, but I wasn't certain I was ever going to shed that grudge. He tried again. Is it about Walter Sanders getting stabbed? Wow, that was crazy. Right in front of the compasses. I heard you were there. Oh, yeah, I was there. Scary. But he'll be okay. They'll reprocess him, and he'll be back good as new. You know that as well as anyone, Bobby. Because it had happened to me. And I also knew that reprocessing wasn't the jaunt in the park he seemed to think it was. To be honest, Clarence, my man, I'm not worrying about Walter. I'm worrying about me. He frowned at the nickname, which he hated. His true name was Harahelio, and our bosses had given him the Earth name Harrison Eli. Excuse me. But Sam had dubbed him Clarence after the movie Angel, and now everybody at the compasses called him that. I don't understand. Do you think the mugger meant to get you instead? Oh, I can practically guarantee it. See, I recognized him. Somebody with a grudge against you? Maybe, but that's not why I think he was after me. I took another drink, but the Bloody Mary tasted metallic now, and I put it down and suppressed a sigh. I was going to have to file a report on it anyway, but I felt the need to share it with someone or something other than the glaring, emotionless light of heaven. My first choice would have been Sam, but Sam wasn't available to me anymore. And man, did I miss him. Okay, I said. So this started back in the 70s. Hold on. Clarence gave me that serious junior angel look that always made me want to smack him. You've only been an angel since the 90s, Bobby. You told me. Kid, shut up. Shut up and listen. It started back in the 1970s. No, I wasn't around then, or if I was still alive and I don't remember. Bodies started turning up in odd places in the Santa Cruz Mountains, the range that separates San Judas from the Pacific Ocean. Usually dumped beside a highway overpass, all of them stabbed repeatedly by a four-edged blade like a bayonet. After the third turned up with the same M.O., someone noticed that all the dumping locations had graffiti on them, and that the same piece of graffiti was always there. A single word. Smile. S-M-Y-L-E. It was a tag even the gang experts down in L.A. hadn't seen before, and as a nickname for known criminals, it didn't connect with anything in the records. Some reporter remembered his college lit courses and suggested in a column that it might have something to do with Chaucer's description of a murderer as, quote, the smiler, S-M-Y-L-E-R, with the knife, K-N-Y-F-E, beneath his cloak, C-L-O-K-E. For a few weeks, the press was off to the races with that, but even after the murders were solved, nobody ever confirmed it had anything to do with old Jeffrey C. Anyway, the killings kept happening. I think there were 6 altogether, and after a while, the police began to put a few things together. The guy had to have a car and seemed to find his victims at night. All of them were young people from the coastal towns, and the theory was that he was taking them right off the sidewalks, either by offering them rides or simply forcing them into his vehicle. Making a long story shorter, the police in Santa Cruz and Monterey and other coast cities began keeping an eye on the local universities and junior colleges. And one night, an officer scoped a guy in a battered old VW van acting suspicious, driving back and forth along the road outside Cabrillo College. The driver spooked and ran. The officer called in backup, and it turned into a chase. It didn't last long. You don't outrun a police cruiser in a VW. And the van lost it on a turn and crashed into a streetlight. The driver's side glass was broken, and there was no sign of the driver, but the officers smelled gasoline, so they approached carefully. Then the van exploded. The huge fireball shook windows for blocks, burned 2 of the cops, but not critically. They found the driver's body, or at least they were pretty sure it was the driver's body. It was burned too badly to be certain, and they couldn't get an ID from the dental records, but all the officers on scene swore nobody got out of the van. They also found a weapon in the wreckage, twisted and melted by the heat, but pretty obviously the blade that had killed those half-dozen victims. A nasty handmade thing about 18 inches long, capable of making a wound that wouldn't close up. In other words, he liked to see people bleed. They found a few things in the ashes that suggested the killer had been living in the van. Apparently, he had also been carrying several cans of gasoline in the back and decided to go out that way instead of being taken to jail. The murders stopped after that. End of story, right? 22 years later, they started again, here in San Judas. Same MO, except the guy was burning his victims' bodies this time. But one of the bodies was discovered by a passing motorist who had a fire extinguisher. And when they got the remains to the medical examiner, there it was, that 4-sided wound. And, of course, the graffiti tags were showing up again too. A little smaller this time and in odd places, hard to see. But the word smile was spray painted somewhere near each body. By the time the 4th victim was found out by the salt piers, the police had decided it must be a copycat. The length of time and the fact that they were so certain the body in the van had been the murderer's didn't really admit any other possibility. But they were wrong. It was the same guy. They were right about one thing, though. He was definitely dead. This was when I was in Counter-Strike, the paramilitary unit where I first trained, and the word came down to us that our superiors suspected the hairy hand of hell. If Smiler had come back from the dead, then there was only one explanation, and it had horns and carried a pitchfork. That seemed pretty weird from our end because the murderer's MO was exactly the same as before, students and other young people. See, normally, if the opposition have an asset like that, they put him or her to work doing something more useful than just random killing. Leo, my old top kicker, said they might be using Smiler to shake people up, to improve the climate for Hell's other operations, if you get what I'm saying. Like they taught us in angel training, the opposition thrives in chaos. And it was pretty clear that chaos was what this guy was causing. The newspapers persuaded someone on the force to talk about the smile tags, and soon it was graffiti murderer returns and ghost or copycat and all of that bullshit. For months, it was like Son of Sam had come to Jude. A couple of cruising dumbasses got shot at by scared college girls carrying their daddy's guns, and half the waterfront tourist business dried up. I won't bore you with all the details of how we tracked the guy down. Counter-Strike Unit Leray. How have I been pronouncing it? Doesn't matter. Counter-Strike Unit Leray, also known as the Harps, have methods the cops don't even dream of, and that was necessary because Smiler was no longer a living man. Not that finding him was easy, even for us. Whatever had made him into a psychopathic murderer had been refined and polished by hell, and San Judas was a fuck of a lot bigger and easier to hide in than the little Pacific Coast towns he'd been haunting in the 70s. He actually killed another one after we started looking for him, a paperboy out on his morning rounds, and that burned all of us in the harps like fire. Also, he was beginning to spread his net wider now, and the papers picked up on it. It was like the whole city was going mental. We had to deal with him quickly. We got a lucky break, a tip from an informant that put us right on his tail. It turned out that the killer wasn't even staying in San Judas itself, but in an abandoned junkyard down in Alviso that had been red tagged by the EPA for toxins and was awaiting Superfund cleanup. What did Smiler care if the place would have killed anyone else? He was already dead. He wasn't even living in the deserted office. Instead, he'd made a burrow for himself in the piles of wrecked autos and discarded appliances, nesting down in the middle like a rat. The Harps was the first unit to reach him, which was okay with us. Call it the sin of pride, but there wasn't a CU who didn't want to be the ones to get the bastard. Smiler wouldn't come out, even though we had him surrounded. Finally, we tossed a couple of incendiaries in after him. That worked. Maybe he didn't want to die the same way twice. I don't know. Anyway, when the flames started, he came out quick enough. Did I say he was like a rat? More like a spider, at least when he came scuttling out of a hidden hole in the mountain of twisted metal and jumped down before we could even lift our guns and aim, his baggy hooded black sweatshirt flapping and that long, ugly weapon in his hand. Smiler jumped on an angel named Zaniel so quick that he managed to stab him 3 times before Sam hit him with the butt of his assault rifle and knocked him off. Zaniel was so badly wounded that he had to get a new body. But Smiler got Rehabuth even worse, putting that wicked 4-edged blade right through his eye and into his brain. Reb got another body too, but he also retired from Counter-Strike soon afterward and got a job upstairs. Said it wasn't the getting stabbed so much, but that face-to-face moment with the guy just before the knife went in. Said he'd never seen anyone so happy. The highest himself only knows how many more of us the little shit might have damaged, or how many of us might have gone down from friendly fire, because he was horribly fast and everybody was shooting wildly, but someone got lucky and raked him with an M4 full of silver rounds and took half his leg off. Smiler started trying to crawl away, leaving a trail of blood like a snail's track, and at first I thought I was hearing his death gasps, but after a moment I realized he was laughing in a terrible, dry, whispering voice. Laughing. I was close enough to put a dozen bullets into his head, and I was just about to do that when Leo stopped me. "No," he said, "we're not sending this one back." I didn't really get what he meant, and I was even more confused when he emptied a clip into Smiler's legs. Blood and bone splinters and ruined flesh flew everywhere, but the horrible thing still wouldn't stop laughing. Leo stepped up, kicked away the long pointy thing lying near the killer's hand, and then put his boot under Smiler's gut and turned him over. "Good God Almighty," Sam said, and I probably said something similar. We'd both seen a lot of ugly stuff, but Smiler was worse than anything somehow. Whatever, his skin was gray and pulled tight over his bones like a shriveled corpse, mottled with dark purple-blue patches too regular to be bruises. His jaw stuck out like a piranha's, so that even with his mouth closed, you could see his bottom teeth. Deformed little things like seed pearls, a perfectly straight line of them. But his eyes were the worst. His eyes were all black, except for a little sliver of bloodshot white at the edges when he looked around, like he was doing now. The rest of the Harps, the ones that weren't tending Reb and Zone, gathered around, and as he looked at us, he opened his mouth and started giggling again. The inside of his mouth, Well, it looked rotten. That's all I can tell you. Black and gray and oozing and rotten, except for the little bright spots of blood. Angels, he said in his scratchy voice. It love you. All for you. That's very genuine. All for you. Sam was ready to shoot him in the head that second. Wipe that horror away in a storm of bullets, but Leo yelled, No! Stand down, soldier. Leo waved his phone. They were bigger in those days. I've called the bagmen. I'd never heard the expression, and at first I thought he meant the medics. He'd called them, too, to treat our wounded, but they weren't the people he was talking about. Just keep him here, Leo said, but don't touch him. We're not sending him back. But, Leo, Sam said quietly, the convention? I don't give a fuck about the convention. And I suddenly understood, or at least some of it. See, the Tartarian Convention says that in conflicts on Earth we can do anything to the demons' physical bodies, just like they can to ours. But when their, or our, bodies die, all bets are off, and everything returns to status quo ante. Which means that the souls go back to their respective abodes, hell or heaven, and whatever happens next is up to the authorities of those places. Which means you can kill a demon's body and send its soul back to hell, but you can't do anything to prevent its masters from popping it right back into a new demon body. And as far as I knew then, that wasn't just the convention's rules, that was the reality. We couldn't do anything to a demon's actual soul any more than they could do anything to ours. I was about to learn differently. The bagmen showed up even before the medics did. A sparkling line appeared in the air just like when we open a zipper to go outside and meet the souls of the newly dead. 3 guys stepped through. 3 angels, I'm assuming, but I couldn't swear to it because they were wearing something like hazmat suits, though not the kind you buy here on Earth. The faces behind those masks were blurs of shifting light. The bagmen didn't say a thing, just looked to Leo. He pointed to Smiler where he lay. The little horror was still wheezing and giggling quietly, but you could tell he was bleeding out. One of the bagmen produced something from out of thin air, or at least that's how it looked, a billowing thing, like a parachute made from pulsing light, and then shook it out over the horrible thing on the ground. At first it just lay on him like a sheet, twitching as he moved beneath it. Then it began to shrink, until Smiler was nothing but a glowing mummy, too tightly wrapped even to struggle. Step back, please, one of the bagmen said. Then he and his companions produced the strangest guns I'd ever seen, about the size of Mac 11s, but with a shiny bell like a trumpet's instead of a barrel. When they pulled the triggers, fire vomited out of the ends of their weapons and engulfed Smiler, flame so white and hot that it might have come from the inside of a star. We all moved back rapidly, way back, but I still got my eyebrows singed. In the scant seconds before the bundle on the ground shriveled into smoking ash, I swear I could still hear that awful laugh. Then it was over. The ashes glowed and a few dark wisps blew up into the air like spider webs. The wind carried them away. The bagmen didn't say anything else, just reopened their sparkling gash in the air and disappeared. Leo took the 4-edged blade, maybe as an ugly souvenir, maybe for some other reason I didn't and don't understand. Then we went home. I don't get it, said Clarence. He looked like I felt, queasy and depressed. What did they do? To Smiler? Not exactly sure. Leo didn't like to talk about it. But as far as I can tell, they bagged him in something that rank and file angels like you and me don't know about. Something that kept his soul from returning to hell when he died. And they burned him alive. That's horrible. You wouldn't think that if you saw him. Saw it, whatever he was. But the thing that's bothering me is that I saw him again last night. It was Smiler who stabbed Walter Sanders, even though I'm pretty sure it was me he wanted. But how could it have been? You said this demon's soul was burned with his body. I don't know. But I know one thing, and that's what's got me worried. No ordinary demon in hell could have brought Smiler back. I mean, Leo said that the thing was gone forever, and I could tell he believed it. I think this must be Elagor's work. I paused. Clarence knew about the Grand Duke of Hell and the monstrous Galu he'd sent after me, although he didn't know the truth about Kaz or how personal the quarrel between me and the Grand Duke had become. Let's just say Elagor doesn't like me. Not at all. And I'm guessing only somebody as powerful as him could bring that nasty thing back from the dead a second time. So what are you going to do? I reached for the rest of my Bloody Mary, distaste overcome by other needs. I drained it and wiped my mouth. Hell if I know, kid. Chapter 5. Hog Caller. Actually, I had one idea, but I couldn't do anything about it until midnight. To keep my head straight, I sat up, listening to Thelonious Monk and his quartet playing at Carnegie Hall over and over. It didn't really work because I kept wondering how perfect music like that could happen in such a fucked up universe. When the clock finally struck 12, I turned down Coltrane mid-solo and called my favorite hog. He's only half a hog, really. My friend Fatback, which I never call him to his face, is a werehog named George Noseda. During the day, man with pig's brain. After the witching hour, pig with man's brain. No, ladies, that doesn't make him just like all us other guys. Not fair. Bobby! His voice was still gruff from the transformation. I should have given him a few more minutes, but I was desperate. What can I do for you? No, what can I do you for? Information, fast as you can get it for me? It might keep me from being turned into a human kebab. So what else is new? One of these days you're going to say, take your time, George, there's no hurry, and I'll know it's truly the end of days. Don't make jokes, buddy. Not tonight. When stuff starts to slide, and the important stuff in my life was sliding like a jackknifed panel truck, Bobby D's world can turn into a bad horror movie quick. Stuff that would make even a werehog faint. I need information on a dead guy. Well, a supposedly dead guy. I ran down what I already knew about my latest worry, both the original Charmer and Smiler version 2, plus what little I'd been able to see of version 3. Can you find me some information, fast? From the snort, you might have thought he was changing back to pig brain again, but actually it's a lot louder and less pleasant when it really happens. Yeah, sure, Mr. Patience. Just let me get some slops down. I'm starving. Doesn't the other version of you eat? Yeah, but not enough to keep 800 pounds of pork happy after I change. But I'll be right on it in half an hour or so, man. It's always strange to be talking to a pig in the middle of the night, but as swine go, Fatback is definitely one of the best. No, thanks. Call me if you get anything interesting. Otherwise, just send it all to my phone. No problem, Mr. B. If you're trying to find a dead guy, though, maybe you should talk to some other dead people. You know a few, right? Know a few. They're my bread and butter, Georgie. But I've got to get some shut-eye first. I feel like shit. Count your blessings, Bobby. That's what I sleep in. So the next day, when the sun was far enough up in the sky that it didn't give me a headache, I went to see the Solihuls. The Solihull sisters are a pair of middle-aged English women who died in a fire half a century ago, almost certainly one they'd set to get rid of their parents. Because of this, they didn't go to heaven, of course, but for some reason they haven't gone to hell either. Still, the sisters are very nice, if a bit screw-loose, so I try not to think too much about the arson part of their bio. I really needed some expert help to find out how Smiler had come back, and the Solihuls liked me and were always willing to chat. My world is full of folks like that, in-betweeners who don't quite belong to one side or the other. My piggy friend, Fatback, didn't really count that way because he hated hell so badly for the werepig thing that he spent all his time getting up in their shit, research-wise. I caught up with the sisters at the latest diner they were haunting. They preferred tea rooms, but apparently San Judas was short on good ones. I took a table in the back where it wouldn't be so obvious that I was talking to invisible people. Invisible to everyone but me, that is. As always, I had brought the sisters a gift, so after the two ghost ladies had finished telling me about the fun they'd had teasing some paranormal investigators who had started hanging around their previous diner, I lifted a small gift-wrapped box onto the table. "Here, I brought you a little something," I said, and took the lid off the tin. "What is it?" Doris asked. "Oh, Bobby, you darling! Pastilles! Betty, Violet, pastilles!" Betty leaned forward for a long sniff. "Ah, lovely. The French kind. Oh, I love these. Much better than those what's it brothers our gran used to give us." I let the sisters enjoy the scent for a while. That was about all they could do, but judging by their noises of rapture, that was plenty. Then I asked them if they knew anything about a revenant named Smiler and told them what I knew of his history, at least through his first two deaths. "Don't think so, dear," Betty said after some consideration. "There was a fellow they used to call the Smiler, but that was years ago in England, and he was a tall fellow. Lovely teeth, too. Dead since Queen Victoria's day, everyone said, but he had a set of pearlies you could read by on a dark night. Still, he'd done his victims with arsenic, hadn't he? Cyanide, dear? Right you are, our Doris, cyanide. It wouldn't be him, would it?" I said I didn't think so. Then there was Moaning Sally, but she was a girl, wasn't she? She stabbed her lover and some of his family with one of those bayonets. Quite a lot of stabbing altogether. They said she killed herself in a prison cell, then came back and hung about the street near St. Chad's in Birmingham, but that's all part of that awful ring road now, isn't it, Doris? The Queen's Way. Dreadful thing. So it probably wouldn't be her, not all the way over here in America. Wait, you said it was a fella you were looking for, didn't you? I could see they weren't going to be able to help me much with Smiler himself, so I tried a more general question. But how would something like that happen at all? Have you ever heard of somebody dying once, then coming back, then being exorcised, or whatever you'd call it? "Watch your language, dear," said Doris primly. "We've got feelings, you know." "Well, let's just say dispatched a second time, and then coming back again? Have you ever heard of anything like that? How could that happen?" "To be honest, love, I've never heard of anything like it. Have you, Betty?" "No, dear. And I feel terrible after you brought us these lovely pastilles. And we've had such a nice visit, but no, I'm afraid you'll have to find somebody a bit more qualified to answer that. Have you tried the Broken Boy yet?" I hadn't, and I didn't really want to, but I was beginning to think I might not have a choice. That's the problem with ghosts. Sometimes they're a lot of help, sometimes worse than useless, but it always takes a long time to find out because most of them like to talk, and they all tend to be a bit loopy. I thanked the ladies and walked out past other customers and the waitresses, none of whom had come anywhere near me during my entire visit, not even to see if I wanted to order something. Clearly, the Solihuls had already begun to freak out the regulars, and I wondered how long it would be until the paranormal fanboys were onto this place as well. I had a worried feeling the sisters might be developing a taste for notoriety. One of the many problems with visiting the Broken Boy was that, unlike the sisters, he didn't give out information in return for a cheap box of hard candy. In fact, last time I heard he was charging $2,000 a session, and my bank account was pretty much tapped out. Heaven doesn't pay us a whole lot. Then again, we don't have to put anything aside for retirement. These are the jokes, people. If you came to laugh, you might as well start now. Anyway, if I wanted to visit the broken boy, I needed to raise some cash, and I didn't have much in the way of options. I'd been thinking about putting my Matador in long-term storage and trying to scrape up the money somehow to buy that '69 Supersport from Orban. But since I didn't play the lottery, I had trouble imagining a scenario where that could happen without the sudden appearance of Santa Claus. Now I was beginning to think that I might have to sell the Matador outright. I loved that car and had spent several years finding parts and getting it refurbished, not to mention putting up with endless shit from Sam and Monica and the rest of my friends because of it. It had to be worth at least $20,000. There were only a few of them left. Of course, the money might save my immortal soul, which I was also rather fond of. It was a tough call. I took a walk along the bay to think it over, and by the time I was finished, I was at the salt piers, where Orban has his gun shop and armory complex. I found him in the big garage, smoking his pipe and watching a bunch of his burly tattooed henchmen use a chain hoist to lower a massive steel plate into an Escalade, presumably to keep the dumbasses who would eventually ride in the back seat from shooting the driver by accident. Orban cocked a shaggy eyebrow at me. "What do you want, Dollar?" He growled in that mouthful of rocks accent he's never shaken in all these years. "You come to pay me finally for warehousing your piece of shit candy car?" Orban's not a big guy, but there's something about him that makes me very glad we get along. "Let's talk," I said. Over a glass of the poisonous red wine Orban favors, I made my pitch about the Matador. That bristling brow climbed up again. He knew how I felt about my car. "Tell you what," he said. "I give you 10 for it." 10? I was so upset I spilled bull's blood in my lap. "It's worth twice that. More." "Shut up. You don't hear me out. I give you 10 for it. I promise not to sell it for 3 months. You pay me back the 10, you can have it. You can't, I sell it and give you 10 more. In other words, he was going to loan me the money on the Matador for 3 months interest-free, which was a pretty damn decent thing for him to do. I didn't say that, of course, because it would only have pissed him off. And I haggled, too, because if I hadn't, he would have been mortally insulted. Orban wouldn't front me any more money, but he did up the back end $2,000, which confirmed to me that the Matador must be worth about 30 big ones. He's not stupid, even when he's doing somebody a solid. He also threw in a couple of dozen high-velocity silver slugs for my Belgian FN automatic. If I bumped into Smiler again, I wanted to be ready. I immediately gave him back 2,000 of the money for an ugly, unarmored banger, an ancient stock Datsun 510 with so much Bondo on the fenders it looked like it had mange. Still, the old 510s could be zippy little cars, and Orban said the engine was good. I signed the papers, left the office while he opened his safe, then took the rest of my money in cash. Orban didn't much believe in banks. 80 Benjamins makes too thick a stack to fit in a wallet, not to mention that wallets can be dropped or lifted, so I put the money in my underwear. Yes, I did. Deal with it. The boxy little car handled surprisingly well. People used to customize the 510s for racing, although nobody'd ever bothered with this one. I stopped to grab some takeout at a burger place in the neighborhood. Then I parked the new ride around the corner from my building under a streetlight, which had just come on for the evening. I was locking it up when something smashed into me from behind, cracking my head against the doorframe so hard that I saw nothing but flashing sparkles for a few seconds. Then I realized I was lying on my back, and something was squatting on my chest. "Where is Feather?" my attacker whispered. "Where Feather? Hide it somewhere." The streetlight was just above us, so I couldn't see the face beneath the shadowing hood, but I could smell its breath. Smell the rot. I carefully shifted my weight to get some leverage, but then I felt something press against my lower eyelid, sharp and steady as a doctor's needle.
It going to find out? Yes, it will.
Chapter 6, Broken. I'm just going to have time to start this chapter, but I will stop it. I will start it. Chapter 6, Broken. I kept very still. A door opened somewhere nearby, and the thing raised its head. The small movement made the blade glint with the reflected streetlight, its point only a thin width of skin from my eye and the brain behind it. The door closed again, and the street was silent. I cursed myself for having parked in a residential neighborhood instead of the busier street in front of my building, but I'd thought I was being careful. How had the little bastard spotted me in an unfamiliar car?
Feather. Tell it.
What? Feather? The tip of the knife, or whatever it was, pushed down until I felt it pierce the first layer of flesh. I sucked in a breath.
It say question. You say answer.
I don't have it with me. Which was mostly a lie. I wouldn't leave a crucial object like that sitting around unprotected. But not completely. The feather was in my jacket pocket, as it always was, but since my buddy Sam had used special angelic powers to hide it there, even I couldn't reach it. See, it wasn't just in the pocket. It was in a version of the pocket that had existed several weeks earlier. Yeah, it's weird. But all you need to remember is feather in jacket, pocket, but not within reach by any normal methods. The feather's hidden far away, I told the withered horror monkey on my chest. I have to get it. Smiler giggled. It was all I could do not to throw up. Knowing something that should have been dead was perched on top of me was one thing. Hearing that papery chuckle again was another altogether. God in his heaven, I'd seen this thing burn.
Go? You not go. You tell. Then it find.
It. Smiler called himself it. Why would I tell you the truth? You'll just kill me anyway. Again, the whispery laugh.
Because it see your friends. It see who you like. It very smart.
I wanted to believe that he meant he would just do plain old physical harm to Monica and Clarence and the rest, as he'd done to Walter Sanders. Then again, Walter still hadn't come back. This thing on top of me apparently couldn't be killed. Was it possible he also knew how to prevent the rest of us from coming back to life? Not to mention that if he was looking for the feather, he must be working for Eligor, and only the highest and his closest servants could say what a Duke of Hell might be able to accomplish. I couldn't take that as a risk. All right, I said. I'll tell you if you promise not to hurt anyone else. And as I said it, I lifted my left hand in surrender. Or at least I wanted it to look that way, because I had a lead kosh zipped into the other sleeve of my jacket. There was no way I would have time to get it out. But during the instant his hidden eyes turned toward my left hand, I swung my other arm up as hard as I could and clubbed Smiler on the side of the skull with a hidden piece of metal. I'd hoped to smash his head in, or at least knock him cold, but I wasn't that lucky. What I did manage was to snap his head sideways and give myself a moment to kick my way free. Then he was back on me, and we were rolling on the ground. The nasty little fucker still had that long blade, which he was doing his best to stick between my ribs. I managed to get my right arm up and took part of the blow on the hidden kosh, but it was a stab, not a slice, so it bounced off the metal and went all the way through the sleeve of my jacket and raked my belly. It burned like someone had tried to tattoo me with a soldering gun. It was all I could do to roll away and dig in my pocket before the thing came after me again. I couldn't get my gun out in time, so I shot through the pocket 3 times, 3 slugs right into Smiler's middle as he lunged at me. bang, bang, bang. If I hadn't been paying more attention to my new ride than my own safety, those slugs would have been silver. But Orban's new rounds were still sitting in my glove compartment, and I was still pushing plain old copper jacketed hollow points. Still, Smiler had a physical body, so I knew they would at least knock him down, if not completely eviscerate him. Guess what? Wrong again. And that's where we're going to stop. So let me mark that. Okay, I'm going to obviously have to practice a Smiler voice that doesn't make me cough every time. So, thank you for joining me. I will be back at 7 p.m. As always, it is a great pleasure to spend time with y'all. And I see many other friends of mine have showed up as well while we were reading. I see Dirk and I see Chris, Fab, and many others. So lovely to have you with us. And I, as mentioned, will return at 7 p.m. Until then, or for those of you who I won't be getting a chance to talk to till next week or whenever you watch this on delayed on YouTube or whatever, I beg you to take good care of yourselves. Take good care of your loved ones, family, friends, all of that. Keep an eye out for those around you who may not be your close circle of intimate acquaintance, but maybe people who just need a kind word, a helping hand, a couple of bucks on the street corner, whatever the case may be. There's a lot of us out there and a lot of us need help. So just do what you can and we'll all make it through together. So again, thank you for joining me. I say peace and be well. And I will see some of you at 7 p.m. and the rest of you maybe next week. And until then, arrivederci bambini. Or ragazzi. But either case, arrivederci.